Hey everyone, so in this video I'm going to go over the 4 most impactful lessons that I learned during my 2 years in grad school. So if you're thinking about going to grad school or in the midst of going to grad school or physio school, this video might be for you. One of the most important lessons that I learned was to check your ego at the door and that you're not the smartest person in the room. This was a big one for me as coming off exams when I did quite well, it really patted the ego. It made you feel like, you knew everything or, you're ready to take on the whole world. But as you transition from a classroom setting to a real life setting, you quickly find out that the stuff that they teach you in textbooks and in class is just the foundation of things and that there's so much more to learn. And just because you can ace a clinical exam that's based on a piece of paper where all the variables are controlled doesn't mean that you can actually help someone in real life and that context really matters. The best example that I can think of this is when you give the most correct answer or treatment to a patient based on what's taught in a textbook. And what I quickly found out is that often many times that this most correct answer or the right answer doesn't actually work and that you almost have to go back to the drawing board. This is when relying on the skills that you obtain through work experience or other courses outside of school becomes so valuable in how you make your decisions and what information you use to sort of piece together a treatment plan. The understanding that doing well on exams does have its utility to some sort of degree, but that there are also some skills and lessons to be learned that can't necessarily be learned from a textbook or a PowerPoint. And this is a lesson that I wish I learned way earlier in my career and would have made such a world of a difference as a learner and a student. The second most impactful lesson that I learned was don't be afraid to be wrong. This was probably the most valuable lesson and biggest challenge that I had to overcome as a student. You have to understand that we all come from different backgrounds, different experiences with sort of a different skill set. Although we're all in sort of that physiotherapy sort of bubble, there's many different views and perspectives on things. And to be honest, in the beginning, whenever I was having a discussion or disagreed with someone or someone disagreed with me or told me that I was wrong, I get very defensive and almost feel embarrassed that I've thought differently or I was incorrect. And this really sort of had a negative impact on my learning experience as I get defensive and as you sort of have that embarrassment of being wrong, you lose that sense of curiosity and that will to learn. Where I had my TSN turning point was when I was able to switch that mindset when presented with a situation of disagreement with a colleague. Instead of putting up those defensive walls and getting embarrassed, I now came from a place of curiosity to sort of learn why I'm wrong or learn why they disagree. This allowed me to gain further insight in a non-confrontational manner with sort of my educator or colleagues. And this was really productive for my learning as now I was able to gain perspectives and opinions of my colleagues in a much more productive manner and not so much of a standoffish sort of vibe. In fact, now I love to be wrong, but with the caveat that there's still some clinical reason to the opposing side and I'm able to sort of understand where they're coming from. But if the situation is that I'm just being told that I'm wrong and that they're right just because you are wrong, or that's just the way things are, then this may help you identify that this situation might not be the most beneficial to your learning, as this approach to a situation of opposing opinions may not always result in a productive discussion or any critical thinking at all. And in my opinion, it's okay for colleagues to disagree or treat differently, as most of the time they all typically end up with the same result. Which is why I find physio so fascinating when you have so many different approaches that, in a sense, all roads lead to Rome. Another valuable lesson that I learned throughout grad school was to stay curious about the topics that you're studying and to always try and supplement the content that you're absorbing either from the work environment or the classroom setting. As I mentioned before, school is really good at teaching you the basics. But when you get into real life situations, there are going to be times where those answers taught in school won't be correct and that you'll have to find answers somewhere else. Instead of just accepting the unknown, remain curious, ask better questions, search for more answers. This may be in the form of reading textbooks, listening to podcasts, watching YouTube videos, or even sign up for a mentorship. My friends and I always joke about that. You can learn anything on YouTube, and that goes the same for physio. When you're a student, you have so much time at your disposal that you can invest in learning. Don't take this time for granted, as once you graduate, things like work, family obligations, social life, all sort of pile up, and time for learning becomes a little bit more scarce. So invest the time that you have now as a student, remain curious, seek those extracurricular learnings that help supplement the content that they're teaching in class, as it can take you so much farther than you can think. Another valuable takeaway that I learned throughout grad school was learning how to balance that confidence. The saying, fake it till you make it, is a saying that's preached early on as a student. And although there's some utility in this saying and having confidence in your treatment is important, that confidence still needs to be supported by some critical thinking and evidence. Because if that confidence or fake it till you make it mindset isn't supported by any sort of claims, evidence, or critical thinking, that's when it can be a little bit dangerous for both patients as well as harmful to your learning. You gotta remember, you're still a student, so it's okay if you don't know everything. In fact, most people learn better when they're wrong. This may be due to the negative consequences associated with being wrong or the ego hit that some people take when they are wrong. But nonetheless, when you get things wrong, you often sort of reflect on your processes to make sure that you can get it right the next time. What I think is even more important, though, than reflecting on things when things go wrong is actually reflecting on things when things go right. Many people, I'm guilty of it, is when things go right, you just give yourself a pat on the back, think you're amazing, and kind of keep on going. Stopping and asking the question why I was successful or why that treatment worked was something I wish I implemented earlier on in my career. Being a student is hard, but I hope this video helped, and thanks so much for watching.